lighting and the architectural features. There was some public comment about, in the recent go-around, about looking at the lighting and other such things, but that would be in the future level of detail.
Yeah, just one other thing that comes to my mind in going past the property again today, and it's a very common topic in my head all the time when I'm over here, is that I stopped and looked at the property again. You know, things that you don't see when there's a lot of leaves on the trees are all the power lines on that piece of property. In talking with Mr. Creech and Mr. Mosheri in two separate discussions today, the bulk of those power lines will be put underground. There is a high tension power line though on the property that, because of its size and what it carries, will not go underground. But all the minor lines that are there, especially the ones adjacent to Adams Road, will be removed, which will vastly improve the aesthetics. Because if you haven't noticed, you might now that I bring it up, over on this side of the road, on the right side as you're going south, there's this big black cabling that's right next to the tree line. That's going to disappear from this. So, as it has in all other projects that we've seen up and down Adams Road. So that'll really enhance the rural character as you drive down that road where we don't see a power line. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now I note from this new site plan, or the smaller version the artist rendering in your supplemental information, that it appears that these changes to remove that roundabout and end with a cul-de-sac so you can pull some of those homes back from Adams and increase the view shed, I see that as a positive. But I also note that this slight reconfiguration of the number of ranches versus number of duets does quite a bit, actually. You see it on the blueprint better than this, to keep the smaller ranch units away from the homes that surround us in the Kings Point subdivision, where you see a couple of the duets, but not the ranches, and then across the top there's more duets than the ranches. So it looks like the smaller and more in a group, the ranches that have dropped from 8 to 6.
Right.
Are there still any 8s, or just are they all 6s now? And 4s and 6s, no 8s.
Yes.
But those are mostly concentrated on the southern portion of the parcel, which would be along Dutton, with a few of them along the southwestern portion for the tree buffer. Questions from the commissioners for either the applicant or for Mr. Nix? I noted from last time that we had a few areas we specifically needed to finish hammering out from our discussion on the commission. One is the traffic question. I think we still had some open concerns there, and I want to make sure we address any of those that exist. The second is the character of this, admittedly somewhat difficult to pin down. It's not as cut and dried as something else might be. The third is the PRRO eligibility of this, which Mr. Nix has addressed, but I think was still there are still some concerns in the minds of the questioners or the commissioners. And then lastly, there was a lot of discussion last time and the month before about the question of rental or ownership, rental versus ownership of these units, and is that even a planning consideration? Is it within our purview to factor that into our discussion? Is there anything else that the commissioners think is an open item that we need to explore at this stage? No? Okay. what I would like to do is, to make sure our list is complete, and perhaps give some time to the citizens. I'll allow a few minutes of public input before we continue our deliberations on these points. So is there anybody like to, go ahead. First hand in the air. Again, I would like you to respect the rules we usually follow with regard to a public hearing. State your name and address for the record at the podium, which you're about to do. Please keep your comments limited to 2 minutes, and respect for others in the room. Don't repeat what you've already heard prior to that.
No, I was just commenting to our lawyer friend on your 2-minute comment.
Go ahead.
In any event, my name is Frank Ferraiolo. I'm at 5600 Kirkridge Trail. I just need a point of clarification, and I thank you for bringing up with extreme clarity the difference between the pride of ownership of a dwelling and a rental property that you're going to clarify tonight. I appreciate that. The one thing that I'm concerned about is that in the traffic study, I'm assuming that the development that has pursued around the, beyond Kings Point, but Kings Ridge, that development that's going on there now over the past 3 months, I'm guessing is putting in about 50, maybe 60 homes. And I think, I might be wrong, but are they part of Blossom Ridge, or are they part of Kings Ridge? Would be my question. If they're part of Kings Ridge, then I applaud Mr. Messeri and his development of the single-family development in Kings Ridge, and I wish him well there. But the other point then would be, if these are part of Kings Ridge, when the traffic studies were done, were the 50 or 60 or whatever the number of units that these single-family homes represent, were they taken into account in the impact on the intersection at Dutton and Adams, which beyond the commercial aspect and the rental aspect of this, they call it a senior living area, but it's a rental community. Beyond the rental community that's being put there, the fact that there's going to be so much more pressure on that intersection is really, I think, the concern of a lot of people. And I just passed that on. And I just like that clarification on those single-family homes, I'm assuming, and the traffic study. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bless.
Greg Bless, 2222 Westfield. A couple things. Larry actually touched on the one that I had raised concern with. In Larry's report, the traffic study was definitely incorrect. It does not state totals. It states per unit. We know that there's 61 MRD and there's 284 senior housing. So if you multiply times the amount of usage, it's approximately 60% more trips. So if Larry could just update your report to show the totals, I don't think that's much to ask. And besides, you had stated you had already caught it. So hopefully that'll be in the revision. Natural resources, you had talked about the tree ordinance not being a requirement of this part of the phase. I've got a question on that because part of the requirement is to prove that you're not, that you're paying attention to and you're applying the natural resources. I know that woods very, very well. I grew up in that woods. My Uncle Bob owned the land that was purchased. It is there. It's a woods. It's a forest. You find that they're all large diameter. This is not shrubs and bushes. This is trees that big around, 20 inches plus. So to get the diameter correct before you approve how this is getting placed, I don't know how the heck you would ever replace them all. If you cut down one of those, you got to plant 10 other ones. If there's already a woods with huge diameter trees, I think it's basically impossible. But I'm not a professional at this. I don't think Larry is. I don't think any of us are. If somebody could go out, measure the trees, figure out how many trees would be cut down by this plan, how many would have to be replaced, and how that would even be done. I can't imagine you'd have to buy 200 acres to plant a solid row of trees to get what you need to do to replenish the amount of trees that are on that property right now. An aerial view, if you go on Google, you can see how many trees are on that property. It's a forest. That's the only part of the natural resources I think we have to review, because that's saying how much the density would affect it, because the current proposal of 3 to 5 units could go to 7, but it can't go to 7 if it depletes the natural resources by the statute of the master plan. It says by these constraints. One of the constraints is natural resources. And it also has in 24.4, which is what 27, I'm sorry if I'm telling you numbers, but in 27.04, which is the PRRO, it states to go to the 24.04, which is special land use, to get the requirements of what you also have to pass. And in that it also says you can't deplete the surrounding home value as part of Section D. I think Larry has mentioned it before, and he thought he wasn't really depleting it because look at another place in Rochester, it didn't seem to do much to theirs. Was it there previous? Was it there after? I think you really need an assessor to go in and just pick a random number of homes around directly adjacent to the property and say, how would this impact the value of these homes? Let the assessor, who's a professional, tell you, will it or won't it? And then that would be a fair assessment of that, and you would be able to pass that section one way or the other, and that way nobody's assuming. Assuming can get everybody in trouble. Last thing, the only noted item, Dominic had mentioned, and I think Larry had also mentioned a number of times in his reports, the increased density of 3 to 5 is what the master plan is recommending. When it recommended this is a high density. Okay, it didn't recommend 7.38. It did say you could, if you found valid reason with minimal or no impact, by going to an increased density beyond the 5. The only examples that anybody's given has nothing to do with this property. It's 2 adjacent properties, which I think both are Dominic's, and that received an increased density, but just because what's adjacent to it received a massive amount of increased density doesn't make it right for this one. You're evaluating this proposal on this piece of property per the rules and per the guidelines given to you. The other example is other senior housing developments in the area have a similar number, but the similar number is not even close. The similar number was 102. That's the average. We're 160, aren't we? Something like that?
282.
Well, we're talking about the main housing.
Yes.
We're talking about the main one, not everything. So in all fairness, I just want to make sure when we're comparing apples to apples, if what we're trying to do is find an average and say, here's a good example to follow, that it truly is apple to apples. Right now, we're not even close. It's a 30 to 40% increase, and I don't think anybody's arguing this would be a great development at the right density. So, enough said. Thanks.
Thank you. Great.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, committee. I have 3 items I'd like to discuss. I'm sorry, my name is Terry Walker. I live approximately 3/4 of a mile from the proposed zoning change. I live at 3411 Sussex Drive.
Thank you.
Committee, I first of all would like to thank you for the time. I know for a fact how much time you spend. It isn't just this once-a-month meeting. The other times that you spent getting the business done. My father was a chairman of the planning committee outside of Kingston, New York, and I can remember how many times he was away from home. Second thing, I spent this holiday at Alma, Michigan, about 2 hours away from here north, at the Pathways Retirement Home. I asked for and I got to talk to their Director of Administration, Vicki Johnson.